Hey, Channing, how are you?
What's up, Freddie? How's it going?
Hey, man, I'm really glad to have you on and to hear from you, hear about all your experiences. And yeah, really just really we've developed a friendship over the past like year and a half ish.
For sure.
So yeah, I'm really glad to to introduce you to people listening.
Hey, I like that.
Cool, cool. Well, let me read a little bit about you and just kind of brag about you and your accomplishments. Channing Walker is the CEO of Longhorn Ventures Holdings. He's a seasoned executive and entrepreneur with a distinguished military background. A former leader in 1st Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group, Channing leveraged his expertise in defense contracting to drive strategic initiatives in construction, training development, and staffing. As the principal of Longhorn Ventures, he oversaw 2.4 billion in defense in the Department of Defense, their assets, demonstrating obviously a sharp command of operations and financial stewardship. Recognized for his leadership, Channing was selected for the 2025 CEO Circle cohort, which you and I are in together, which is awesome.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and you also hold a lot of degrees. You have a degree in psychology, two MBAs in supply chain management and organizational leadership. You have your PMP certification, your PGM, which is program management certification, and you're a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. Dude, where where did you find time for all of this? Plus your all the businesses you're involved with. Um, Crazy. So one thing that just jumps off here is this Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. How long did it take you to get that?
Well, I was able to achieve the Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt when the Army had the what's called cool organization,
I remember that.
and they were piloting a program where Lean Six Sigma was being implemented into the United States Army at that point in time. Worked out extremely well. Uh, Me going after the Master Black Belt like insignia, it was one of those things where it's just like, hey, Six Sigma is about decreasing waste in an organization while increasing efficiency. That is most important. Every business operation has to understand how to implement those things. If you go back to the history of it, it starts back with Toyota. And Toyota was the first organization that implemented Lean Six Sigma into their processes. And they became one of the leading industries, and they still are. How does
Mhm,
this happen? Because guess what? Old ways still open new doors, right? And
mhm.
I believe in those things. So I keep those processes. And when I was consulting, I utilized those to better implement new ways to organizations that didn't have those opportunities.
Mhm.
So that worked out well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I remember when we first connected, Channing, like we met at a bar, right?
Yeah.
Like most of the networking things. But
Yeah.
there you were like, "Hey, I was still active duty, and that's when I got started in government contracting, and you won your first SEER contract when you were still active duty." Like, how
Yeah.
the hell did that happen?
So when that happened is I was getting ready. I was going through the medical retirement process of the military, and it was more so just briefly to speak on that. I was being transitioned out of the army for what's called traumatic brain injury. That was kind of like the precursor for me being transitioned out, and that was all from an IED blast that happened back when we were in the Aruzgan province, right? Uh, from that gave me the opportunity to start looking on the outside. I knew when I was transitioned out of the army, I did not want to work for someone. I said, hey, how do we start going after my own opportunities? And I ran at that point in time a few businesses. I had a nightclub, I had a sports bar in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I did angel investing back in the day, and it was great opportunities, and I just did not see my soft landing. And when the opportunity arrived on my phone through FedBiz Ops back in the day, FedBiz Ops was before Sam's. Like,
I remember that.
it popped up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I messaged my business partner at the time, Al Flores, and I said, Al, do you think we need to go after this opportunity? He says, hey, let's do it. Said we only have like 14 days. And in that 14-day time period, we were able to put together a comprehensive bid that USASOC was able to be like a part of, and they awarded us the contract. We found teaming partners, which was like two organizations, uh, PD Systems and TSI, large organizations, and we teamed together and we all went after that contract as a joint venture. And as a joint venture, we were awarded it, and that was, we laugh about it. We say it was our best day and our worst day because I did not know what all was behind being awarded a contract.
Right.
I didn't understand how the funding had to work. I didn't understand how the staffing had to work. I didn't understand how to recruit. And it all happened. And I'm telling you, Freddie, it was crawl, walk, run, but rapidly, bro. Like, hey,
Was many iterations of it, right?
oh man, we had to do it in 30 days. And I was like, hey, we have to have funding, we had to have personnel, we had to have all these different insurance set up. And what happens is you have to do that as an organization so seamlessly that no person is supposed to feel
Interruption. Right.
any interruption.
Right.
And that was something like I never had experienced
Yeah.
before. And guess what? It we did it. Was it the best way? Probably not. But like most of the time in any business practice, your best product should never be your first product,
Mm-hmm.
right? Hey, your best product should be your finished product, and that's it. So I had to start learning that. So I was able to piece all these things together with the help of my business partner and a lot of outside entities. We were able to make all these things happen very rapidly. But after that, we started becoming more efficient in our processes, and now we knew what we needed to have for the next opportunity,
Yeah.
and that worked out well.
Yeah. The how large was that contract again? It was like
Uh, that contract at that point in time, dollar wise, was about like $11 million contract.
yeah. So
You
your
know,
first foray into government, like first foray really into legit business, aside from, I mean, running bars that and nightclubs, that's a business too. But like where you have to deal with multiple parties and stakeholders and government, especially, you walk into a $11 million business and you
yeah.
were successful. Like
Uh,
that's crazy.
we figured it out, and I'm talking about like a lot of like of those opportunities. It wasn't that it was like the best product. We just figured it out.
Yeah.
And I really like that. I appreciate that. I appreciate my partners that I had at that point in time. Uh, and now I personally have evolved my processes to it, and we pivoted so different now. But those were like the inner workings of just initially getting into the federal contracting sector.
Fair. Yeah, I remember again, like we were talking about this in Veterans Edge last year when we met, and I was like, I did not believe you. I was like, as an active duty soldier, you won it, and then you walked me through, and it was crazy. I'm here struggling to get into my first government contract, but you like kind of just went for it,
So at that point in time, my wife's father, really great guy. He was on the Delta side, and he said, "Hey, Channing, I'll tell you this:
that's right. You had help.
if you want to go after a government contract, you write your first one. If you win it, you did something right. If you don't win it, I'll help you."
Mm.
We won our first contract, so that was not a good thing. Like, it was like, hey, So I don't even know what I did wrong or right. I just knew and it's something that we do in the military. It's improve on your foxhole, right? So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, I improved on what the product I presented, and from doing that, I was able to go after more opportunities, and they worked out extremely well. But I can't tell you that I had some secret sauce. I did not have it. I did not know what I did right. I don't know
Yeah.
what the pricing as opposed to my next company. At that point in time, we were competing against a company by the name of Cubic.
Mm.
Cubic is a very large defense contractor. And Cubic won the contract from General Dynamics. And so we are a small fish competing in a large pond. There was no way that we knew
Mm.
that we were going to be awarded these contracts, and these were large fish.
Mm.
The what happened and what aided us in this process is just opening up that segue for service disabled veteran owned small businesses, and large companies like GD and Cubic had to start reevaluating who they partnered with,
Mm.
and that helped us at that point in time. That contract, when we won that contract, though, it was an LPTA contract, lowest price technically acceptable. Some people would say, "Hey, don't go after LPTA contracts," but I didn't have a lot of overhead. So, hey, guess what? I'll go after an LPTA contract, but guess what? I made profit off of that contract
Mm.
because it was only at that point in time, and our overhead was only two of us, and we were bootstrapping at that point in time. So, therefore, we were making a decent amount of capital, but like a company like General Dynamics that has an overhead of millions, that doesn't even freaking fire up the
Mm.
engines to get them rolling.
Exactly.
A company like Cubic, it doesn't even grease the wheels for them either. So therefore, for us, it was substantial for us, and it was necessary to take me out of the United States Army on a medical retirement uh, platform to generating capital. That's great. I
So
appreciate
yeah, let me ask you a little bit about Longhorn Ventures. Okay,
it. Mm-hmm.
you guys are obviously a player in the government contracting. Can you tell us what you do? Longhorn Ventures. What do you focus on? What kind of projects do you?
Longhorn Ventures, I would call it almost a trifecta. Like, and it was kind of like how we talked about. It was kind of like staffing by way of winning a contract. So essentially, when I say we staff, it is because half of the time, every contract you're awarded, you hire incumbents, right? Incumbents are already on the contract.
Mm.
The only attrition ratio is the people that decide that they are more loyal to the other company, or that the salary is not commiserable to them, and then they want to leave. Now we recruit for those positions. That doesn't mean like you're a staffing agency, but every company is a staffing company because we have to keep butts in seats,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
That's the reality of it
Mm.
all. Training and development is just easy because that is the lowest financial output, but it can render you the maximum return on your investment. By if you win these contracts, you win the most money and you put out a zero output, right? Construction is a little bit different because when I got into construction, I was able to venture into that market through a business partner of mine, and she was extremely smart. But with construction, you're a lot front heavy.
Mm.
You are a lot more on the asset based, capital based front end, front load, and you look for your returns on the reactionary side. You have to, later on, we'll talk a little bit more in our conversation, but with construction, you have to be a little bit more risk tolerant.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Um, oh, yeah. I was just thinking about like our conversations in the past, but you are somebody that wants to help a lot of people. I've noticed that from
Mm-hmm.
the beginning. I mean, not only just helping me understand government contracting, what I was walking into, but throughout, you have a reputation for it. And now you're in government contracting, and you're recruiting vets, and you're helping them find their professional path and all that. Like, what's your source of inspiration for all of this?
My source of inspiration stems from a lot of things. But what's important is understanding that those who have the ability have the responsibility. And I never forget, I was getting ready to be promoted in the Army on the enlisted side at that point in time. And I didn't want to go after the promotion. I didn't feel like I was adequate. I didn't feel like I was deserving because I've seen so many other freaking people who were way more like qualified, way more like they more deserving. And my commander came to me, and he eventually left us and went to be a Delta Force commander as well. Really amazing guy, and I don't want to drop names, but he looked at me and said, Channing, those who have the ability have the responsibility. And he's like, he he pinned me behind closed doors, right? And it was one of those things like I started understanding the military side of duty. We have to understand, like, Freddie has a duty. You have a duty to give back to the universe what you have absorbed from it. I have that same ability to give back what I take from this world. And that's important. Like, not everyone can do that. Not everyone has the capacity to give back what it takes from it. I appreciate being able to do that. I appreciate being someone the universe chose to give back. And that says a lot. I really think about that. Those who have the ability have the responsibility. Do it.
Yeah. To those that much is given, much is expected, right? Same
Hundred
same thing.
percent.
Same thing.
100%.
So that's awesome that you have that as your inspiration. So when you build these businesses, when you pursue your multi-million, hundreds of $1 million worth of contracts, right? In construction, you can't do it yourself, obviously. So as you kind of think through, you and Al, you talk about Al as being your first partner. Where was a key hire in that SEER contract or whatever behind it that the first key hire you made that kind of changed the trajectory of your business?
I would say the first key hire that we made was a PM, project manager. Your project manager is one of the most important people that you can bring into an operation because they champion what you want to have as an organization in its entirety. They have to be bought in. They have to understand the culture. They have to understand everything else that is embodied in that organization. Uh, and that's important because that PM gives you the information that you have to take back to the COR, the contracting officer. So they are your direct line, first line of defense, you would say, but they're your direct line to any operational aspect of whatever contract you are working on currently. And that's what's important in that regard.
So who was that first one for you that really changed the
Uh,
name of the game?
the first guy that we had, his name, I will give you his last name. His last name was Mr. Crace. And if you do a little bit of research, he was one of the founding fathers of SEER School in its entirety. So he was the best project manager that you could have at that point in time uh, for that contract.
How'd you
He's
find him? How'd you know him?
I met him through a guy you may know in Fayetteville. His name was EJ Snyder.
Hmm.
EJ Snyder was on Naked and Afraid, right? That's his father-in-law. So, hey, now I've already gave you too much information on that. So now it's easy to find him. But that's how I found him. And EJ Snyder was a former SEER instructor as well. And he was a retired sergeant major from the 82nd Airborne. And he has a very extensive background and very one to be proud of, put it like
Sure.
that. Yeah, 100%. So he went through Ranger Battalion. He did everything. He was infantryman. He's really great guy, EJ Snyder alone on his side, but like Lowell Crace was one of the first founding fathers of SEER School.
Mm.
So it's just the one thing I learned, like just being at Bragg, is like, hey, the amount of history and the amount of closeness that you have to people who were great. That is insane. So you are literally walking amongst giants, and that says a lot about those organizations and those individuals as well.
So, I agree, and we got big shoes to fill, big boats to fill, right? To try to continue these programming and training, especially in this area. When you look back, Channing, and you look at not just let's talk about your organic team, right? Your internal team, um, and not just your consultants or contractors that you hire for a project you won. But when you look back at them, your best hires, what was it that really made them successful to you? Was it their skill, their mindset, or just something else that made them really special?
My best hires, I would say, took initiative. And I think that's very important because, like, a lot of things I shouldn't have to tell you to do, but if you see it and you know it needs to be done, then do it. Uh, and that's important. A lot of we are living in a very weird time frame where we have a lot of individuals that have to be pointed in the right direction. They have to be told by the letter what to do, and that is not realistically possible. Certain things like let's just take it from the battlefield. Like, and I don't want to really push that ideology as much, but like, if Freddie sees something, we used to say, see something, say something, right? Hey, like if you see something, you say something. I shouldn't, as a leader, have to tell you to avoid this. You should just know, don't step on that, right?
Mm,
Hey, man, like, hey,
mm,
if you do that, then guess what? You may have to have some repercussions that are automatically attributed to you making a decision that you based on your own. And that's just a byproduct, right? I think that we as individuals or companies, we should not handicap our employees. We should trust that they make the right decisions. But even in those right decisions, they could potentially implode on us, right? But guess what? You give them an option, right? I am already prepared to have that. Like when you start looking at it, you have to be prepared for a loss. You have to be prepared for every scenario that could potentially arise. That
mitigate risk.
that has to be our bandwidth, right?
So how do you like how does Channing you spot that? How do you spot initiative and this when you talk to somebody? Is it just gut instinct? What do you do that you can say, "Hey, you know what, this guy is a go getter? How do you and then whether it stays for their performance is another. Like, do they interview well versus their performance? I'm curious how you've identified that.
So like, I typically go off a couple things. I do like gut. When I see somebody, it's a few things, and I don't know if it takes experience on my end, but when you see someone, and Freddie, you know, from just your perspective, if you see a candidate and you say he has what it takes, you know he has what it takes. And guess what? At the end of the day, your eyes saw it. Sometimes when you look at people, you look at them and you know that they have it or they don't have it. It's the recruiter that recruited Kobe Bryant to the league and the recruiter that passed on to the next person, right? Like, you got to understand, like, hey, they say, hey, man, he was not tall enough. He was short. Like, he didn't have this. He didn't have that. But guess what? That doesn't matter. When you're looking at a business operation, you're saying, hey, how can we increase efficiency. How can we go after new clients? How we foster new business to business? Someone who doesn't have those characteristics would seem like they're outside of the scope, but they may be actually what it needs to make something transformative. We only see things from our way.
I'm gonna push on you. I'm gonna, you know, press on this a little bit more. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I feel I am, I deal with people. You deal with people all day, and I deal with people. That is our profession. And I've been wrong, Channing. I have been wrong, flat out wrong in the past where I thought, man, this guy, he's got the eye of the tiger, right? But then after 90 days, after a few months, you see that he doesn't. It's been just hot air, right? So
Right.
I've come to personally, do a lot of behavioral questioning. I ask about times when they've done things and motivations why, and when they made mistake. I mean, I do all of that and peel back the layer and just kind of understand their motivations. Um, but you say that you can see it. You say that you can see it. I'm curious, what is it, and how right were you?
When I say I can see it, is because it's some sparkle,
Mm,
some it's some, what what we have to do is take a chance, and this is important, man. Like if I guarded my most sacred scenario with my heart, then guess what? No one would ever touch it. I like if I have my business and I guard it, I never want anybody who's gonna freaking like contaminate it to be around it, right? Hey, then I would never allow anybody in the organization.
mm,
But guess what? What does that do adversely? That puts a lot of responsibility back on myself.
mm,
My downtime is never down, and I am continuing to do what I have to let go and be free.
mm,
If I think that I have someone who's a great opportunity and I say, hey man, I think this guy has what it takes, but guess what? The best part about that, I identify when they don't have what it takes. The faster you can do that is the more rapid your organization wins. Like, hey, and I may have a lapse of judgment. I may want something for someone that they don't even really want for themselves. Let's identify that fast. And us as leaders, like, as you as Freddie, me as Channing, like, hey, it is very rare that we make a mistake. If we make a mistake, let's own it very quickly. Let's fix it very rapidly. And what happens very well is we fix our mistakes before it's ever identified. No one ever knows it. Like, hey, if I bought on someone and they were not a great fit, like, guess what? Hey, right on. Hey, I made a misjudgment. Hey, let's get these guys out of here very rapidly. And now no one ever even knows. So that's the important thing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is that you mentioned it before, but the risk mitigation, just having how do you mitigate risk, and how do you like try to fail fast with that person, right? You
That's
can't be
important.
right 100%.
Hey,
No.
one thing you told me
Mm,
even once before, and I remember it. You said, Channing, fall forward,
mm,
fall forward. Like, hey, don't fall backwards, fall forward. So therefore, like even when we fell, we are still going forward.
mm,
Hey, on the plate, when you wear that body armor, it said strike face forward, right?
mhm,
Hey, that means hey, addressing the target. But you have to address it though, right? And that's more important than anything. We have to go directly to the target and we have to address it head on. And by doing those things, it may make you a little bit uncomfortable. You may say, hey man, I made a mistake. But
mm.
guess what? Mistakes are meant to be made. We always get everything right. You know what I mean? Like, geez, man. Like, hey. And I think people like fear making mistakes. I don't care about making mistakes, but what I want to do is not make as many mistakes as the next man. You know?
Fair.
Yeah.
Oh man, I remember those old clay mines.
Yeah.
front facing the enemy. Well, not old, the clay mines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Front facing the enemy. They had to like they put it like printed, engraven onto the
And you
thing
gotta let
just
them
in
know, man.
case.
Hey,
I mean,
dummy proof.
you gotta dummy proof it, right? Because you're in the heat of the moment. You're like, which way is what? You can't memorize it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found, for me, Channing, as I look back, I've done my share of hiring, for myself, for other people. And yes, I try to find the way to quickly fail and or make them successful and just like, you know, um, be a proven player. But I find when I rationalize, I remember that this was my first owner that I worked for back in 2013, 2014 when I got out the military. But he was like, rationalization, the big R is the enemy. When you start rationalizing that person's performance and their decision making, it's all right. Yeah, he was stressed out that day, or you know what, he does better, or she does better. That is the devil. That is the enemy. You start rationalizing performance. You're like, yeah, that's all right, and kind of sweep things under the rug. That's when you have to be careful for that.
So therefore, if you take that same capacity, think about that in every aspect of your life,
Mm,
whether it's marriage, whether it's friendships, whether it's relationships. We have to always take that same proactive capacity. And I think about that in a lot of things that I look at. Hey, mm, some things we write off, you know? And well, should we write it off or should we be proactive about it?
mm,
Or should we just make a mental note? I don't know. I would think that we make a mental note because if we wrote people off for those same things, and we wouldn't have any friends, right? You know what I mean? Like we'd be writing on everybody off. You know what I mean? Hey, man, hey, if I wrote people off by the times that they let me down, Jesus Christ, I don't think I have friends, Freddie. You know what I mean? Like, no, hey, you be there because you haven't let me down yet.
Yet. No, yeah. I mean, you can't like. Of course, you have to understand people do make mistakes, but it's got to be, you know, mitigated, and you just can't rationalize repeated behavior, right?
No.
Repeated behaviors, you can't rationalize. Anyway, let me ask you about, like, as a leader, you hire people like your organic team, and also for your consultants, right? People on the projects. I'm curious, how do you set and shape the culture of those people?
So culture is number one. If I look at like supply chain management, culture takes a lot of buy-in. You understand what I'm saying? Like, hey, when let's just say I was new going into an organization and I wanted to influence change, it takes a lot of buy-in.
You
And
can't
the
do it
people
yourself.
who don't buy in,
Mm,
guess what we have to do? We have to alleviate them very rapidly. And that's where the attrition ratio begins,
mm,
right?
mm,
One thing, we were at the conference in New York, and I don't know if you remember that I asked a question to the CEO of
mm,
General Dynamics,
mm,
and she said, "Hey, when I took over the company, it was fractured.
mm,
The leadership was, and she had to cut essentially 40% of that." And I stood up and I asked her, I said, "Hey, why would you cut 40%?" Because guess what? They didn't have the buy-in, and the new culture that she was about to shift the company to taking, they weren't bought in on it.
mm.
You got to let them go. And hey, it may be hard, it may be difficult, but guess what? We have to understand we you will never be larger than the machine. You will never provide more value than what the machine provides. And that is important because if you understand that, then you understand that you are expendable. We have to understand that we're expendable. And that's key. because hey, everybody thinks they provide such a value to an organization or operation or anything else to that extent. No, hey man, you are not valuable in the operation. Hey, the wheel is moving, and guess what? We can cut you off and still
Reality,
survive. Yeah.
unfortunately. That yeah, you're
So
right. That's real.
yeah, that's where the culture comes in, and that's where like hey, no one's bigger than that. We saw it happen a lot of time in the army and a lot of aspects. I was telling someone and they were laughing about me. I was like, hey man, at one point in time we had a commander who was freaking in an airborne billet. He broke his leg on a jump. They replaced him the next day. And it was like, well, he's no longer airborne. Hey, you are no longer airborne, so therefore you can't hold that position. And what we do terrible as leaders is keep people where they should not be, where they should be moved away, slip away, and that's it. And I have to start understanding. And I mean, it sounds very callous to say something like that. It sounds very callous to make a statement like that. But guess what? At the end of the day, it's true. We don't need you anymore. I'm sorry. Hey, we had you, and now, hey, you are no longer viable. Sorry.
Remember, just you mentioned the CEO of General Dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
Phoebe Novakovic.
Yep.
She was a badass. She was the real deal. Wow. And
she was not only just the real deal. She took over as the CEO or in a capacity of General Dynamics in 2001. That was shortly or before 9/11 happened. So therefore, she's weathered more storms than a little bit. She's seen the Iraqi war happen. She's seen 9/11 happen. She's seen Operation Enduring Freedom happen, and they have been there to facilitate every demand throughout that process. That says a lot for someone who can weather multiple storms and still be afloat. That's important. Uh, we are on our end talking small businesses, but Lockheed, General Dynamics, Deloitte, Booz Allen Hamilton, these guys are the top four. These guys are the ones that keep us afloat on the defense contracting sector. We wouldn't have opportunities if it was not for them. That's important. So for me, even to just pick her brain on something that was so small, but listening to what she was saying, that was invaluable
and
information.
that's priceless for sure.
Yeah.
And remember, I said the big R, rationalization is the enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If she had rationalized, 40% don't buy into this culture, don't buy into this new way. And they're in they're in all of these positions that keep us afloat. And if she rationalized that and she didn't do that, it would have been much harder, right? It would have been much harder for her in the long run to be
Well,
successful.
it would have been catastrophic, like for a company that large, and that's what's important. Is like just on that same note, like where you're talking about scalability, being able to scale as you grow, being able to reduce as you need to. Those are something. Those are major things like we don't think about, but how we scale our growth. When I first started out in operations, someone told me, they said, Channing, two things is going to happen. Either your business is going to grow fast and it's going to grow rapidly, or your business is going to grow slow and you won't be able to fit the demand, right? And I said, man, hold on. That was really excellent advice. But when I was younger, and I heeded every bit of it, uh, and that's therefore I did not have any harshness of like how things went. But if I didn't know that, I would not have been aware how to scale. I just wanted to grow, 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 grow. bro. And guess what? That seems great because you're producing, you're bringing in capital, you're bringing in numbers, you're bringing in personnel. But what happens on the downside of that, or the flip side, when you have to fire all these people, when you have to let them go, when they don't get bonuses, when they cannot get what they need for their section, that sucks, right? And I don't care. I don't know what business has always been cash flush, but a lot of businesses are not. And that really hurts the people in the operations in and of itself. What I told myself and what I made a very big promise to myself is that I would never push to the point where I could not take care of what personally is necessary for everyone that I have. At one point in time, I was pushing very hard. When I was young, I was trying to be successful. And they say, don't focus on being a person of success, focus on being a person of value. And I learned how to be a person of value and a little bit more be a person of quality. And that is what makes me who I am. Like I ain't about mass producing. And Freddie, you're in special operations, bro. They say we don't mass produce special forces, right? They don't mass produce it. That was a campaign at that point in time when they were pushing guys and they were going through the course and they were finishing 14 days through SFAS, right? Hey, guess what? They started seeing a decline of what they were putting in that by pushing rapid production. That felt, you got to understand, you don't want, you would much rather, especially Freddie and the staffing company or any other entity that you have, quality versus quantity. Quality means everything, because when you say, you look at your client, you say, hey, I gave you somebody who is freaking fit for the task. You stand behind that. You know what I mean? Hey, Freddie can put his stamp of approval on that. That is important. Because, hey, if you look at that and you look at what you produce and who you provide to business operations, that means something, man. You
So
can go back. Go ahead.
it's a really good point you bring up. When we work with our clients, it's you know when you want to hire somebody for your team that's like awesome, that does your role for the tactical, via a tactical lens, you need to have a big top of the funnel. You got to have a big top, meaning you have to be prospecting, interviewing, screening a lot of folks in the top so that you can boil down. If you start with a small pool and you're like, "Oh, I know my neighbor's brother, he's in procurement and I could just hire him." I mean, if you just start with that, then you're not going to have enough quality to kind of go through
Of course.
all the end. So that's a big, yes, you cannot mass produce quality, but you need a big top of the funnel to start measuring people and rating them against people, and just like candidates wise to get the final few that are all good, but that one that's truly going to resonate with your culture and your
Do you know where that circles back to? DMACC.
yeah.
Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. That's all Lean Six Sigma. Hey, so therefore, even in the staffing process, that's where DMACC comes in, because the best candidates that you produce out or that you refer are the highest caliber. Their deficiency ratio is 0. You only push out the best product, and that's how it works. So we don't realize how it works in our operational aspect, but guess what? What you just said, the funnel, I was watching. Hey, that is exactly what you're doing. You're setting metrics. You're defining, hey, this is what we need. We set a metric. Hey, we analyze, we push out, and this is what we get. Success every time. So Freddie can replicate it every time. Milspec replicates it every time. And that's how we want to use your people, your key personnel. Freddie's recruiting. Hey man, guess what? Hey, Freddie, I need these positions, bro. But guess what? I would trust that it would be quality every time. Quality over quantity. That's it.
DMACC, define,
Yep.
measure, assess,
Analyze,
analyze, and control.
define, measure, analyze, improve, and control.
Improve
Set
and
some
control.
controls.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
Yep. That's DMACC, man. Hey. It's old school, but it still works. See, like they say, a lock that opens for many keys is a bad lock, but a key that can open many doors is a good key. We got to be very open to that. Like, you know what I mean? Like those same old ways, man, they still open new doors, bro.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course. And that's what I look at.
Absolutely. The Toyota TPS, Toyota production. I mean, I went through Lean. I didn't go through Six Sigma, but those
Yeah.
concepts, those principles, they are timeless.
So you know what I'm talking about, bro. Hey, lean is more important than Six Sigma. Lean is decreasing the amount of waste. Six Sigma is only efficiency ratio, but lean is making sure that we don't have waste.
Lean is like the culture of
of course,
improvement and eliminating waste. And, well, let me ask you here, now you've been obviously involved in a number of businesses, a lot of projects, hiring a lot of people, assessing a lot of folks. Where do you see that business owners go wrong when trying to assemble their team?
I think that business owners go wrong assembling a team when they try to make it what they want it to be. See, what happens is we attempt to assemble a team of what we think is necessary for us. But that's not what a team actually is. I need a team that can do things that I don't see on the horizon. So what if I just built a team of people that were what I needed to be? That's the worst team. I need people that can see or foresee or forecast or see things behind a door that I haven't even seen. And that's what we need. That's where business owners go wrong. They try to stack their table on the people that they like, people that are more commensurable to them, people that they feel are intelligent. Smart guys don't freaking mean anything to me. Guess what? I would much rather. I would say, like, I know specific people who are bringing in an exorbitant amount of capital, and they only have GEDs. Like, Jesus Christ! Like, wait, hold on. But guess what? They understood the process. We have to start understanding the process. We have to say, hey, let me get out of my way and let's go this way. A very good book that I read and I listen back to, and the book is called The Obstacle is the Way. The obstacle is the way. That means, hey, Freddie, you're going to clear a room, right? Hey, you go through it, right? The obstacle is the way. Hey, when you're doing land nav and they had you doing land nav, and a lot of guys who were prior military, they would know they would call it dead reckoning. That means you just go straight through. That's the obstacle. That's the way, right?
Oh, that's fun. I looked it up.
It's a great book.
Ryan Holiday.
The obstacle is the way.
Interesting.
Yeah, the obstacle is the way.
In the show notes. Yeah.
But guess what? You want me to tell you, people spend more time avoiding the obstacle than just going through it. That's life. Who would much rather spend more time trying to back in the military used to do accidents avoidance courses and all this other kind of crap. But hey, guess what? Just go through it. Why avoid when I can walk through some things? Why go around the building when I can just kick in this door? Right? Why do I do that? We have to understand what's the functionality of the things that we do. Why do we do the things that we do? If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Just because we've been taught a specific way doesn't mean that it's the right way.
You're right.
And I question everything. question everything.
You sound like you're a glutton for punishment if the obstacle is the way. Man, I'm looking for the path of least resistance.
No,
Man.
hey, but hey, the path of least resistance is the most walked.
Mm,
That means it's more dangerous.
of course. Yeah.
That's in the path of least. Hey, bro, you
Mm.
don't want to go down. If everyone goes down a path, that's what.
I mean, you gotta when you're clearing rooms though, you're looking for
Oh,
path of least.
now, yeah, all right.
uh, so you said something really interesting about so I think it's just the way you worded it, but it was just it's not about just defining and building a team the way you want it, like what you know and what you see. Just this is the environment, but you want to populate it with folks that are thinking beyond that, that can see you know on the
we, we
horizon.
we we have to have people that see our strength outside, like our strengths, Freddie.
Mm,
Like
of
like
course.
I I believe that I can see things before they happen.
Mm,
But what if I miss something? When I talked to you not long ago, I said, Freddie, man, like I can be strong, but sometimes I'm often weak, right? And we have to understand that. We have to understand our strong suits, and we got to understand where we're weak at. The worst part about this is people don't want to identify as being weak because guess what? That shows some level of vulnerability. What I've learned in the last 12 months, starting from the first time I met you at the Vet Edge conference until now, it told me it's okay to be vulnerable.
mm,
It's okay to show people, hey, where you're weak at. But I also still remember where I'm strong at. But hey, I have to fortify where I was weak at, though. Like, how do I strengthen where I was vulnerable? Vulnerability is not bad. It's just how do we fortify that? And I keep thinking about that, and I'm just like, man, I'm strong, but man, I even get tired, right? I'm strong. I get tired though. Like, hey, I could be doing my bench set at the gym, and I can do several reps, and I get tired. Doesn't mean I can't lift the weight, but it means my muscles at that point in time have reached a limit of exhaustion.
mm.
Someone asked me a question a long time ago. What do you do when you're exhausted? And guess
Take a
what?
knee. Take a break.
Hey, no. But guess what? You can't take a break when you have to perform.
uh,
You can't take a break when you have to produce. You can't take a break. Like, and what do? You just exist. And that's what I had to start learning. Sometimes in life, man, like, hey, Freddie has this going on with his wife, his kids, this and that, the company. Hey, you're exhausted.
mm,
But what do you have to do? Exist still.
true.
And that is
And
important.
that's why
Like,
you need a team.
and that's why you need a team.
Mm,
It goes back to why you need a team.
yep. But you mentioned a lot of good things there. It's true. A lot of the stuff you highlighted really, yeah, it makes me think, right? It makes me think a little bit. Let me ask you, as we're talking, because we're talking more about this hiring and building teams, right? The tactical, like even the strategic way of doing that. What was your like toughest and perhaps the worst hire that you've had in your experience, and tell me how you kind of solved that problem.
So this is a trick question, and I was prepared for it too. So I and I will go back to the guy who we bought on, which was a great hire
Mm,
initially,
mm,
but then he had some allegations
mm, mm,
that fo- followed him, and that was not good.
mm,
It could have been a very catastrophic blow for us. So at that point in time, despite him having legacy, despite him being
mm,
extremely smart about what he's doing, we had to let him go. The risk was not worth the reward.
yeah.
it was at that point in time that he had to go, and I think he knew at that point in time that he botched it up,
Yeah. Yeah.
and no big deal.
You
But
don't have to go through too much
it was
detail.
very hard though. It was
Yeah.
very difficult at that point in time. It's just like, hey man, how'd you get how'd
Yeah.
how'd you get yourself in this boat? Like
Mm,
number one, number two, hey man, you're about to sink the ship.
mm,
Like we can't afford this, so now we have to let you go. Like you have our hands tied, and that worked out, and it didn't work
mm,
out. But all it is what I learned in life is the most difficult things that you do all start with a conversation. It's just a conversation. Like, hey man, like, hey, sorry, but hey, you have to address it. What we do a lot of times is avoid the inevitable. But guess what? It was gonna happen
mm,
regardless, right? It no matter what, if I could have I couldn't prevent it. It was gonna happen. So in that same aspect, you said the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance in that aspect was just letting them go.
mm. Yeah. And you didn't rationalize. You didn't. You guys executed because of the
I
risk,
mean,
right? That was
it was not a good deal.
yeah. It was to mitigate that. Okay, I have a couple more, and then we'll call it
Mhm.
quits. But although this is fun, right? This is
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
anyway. What is? Do you have any? A non-traditional way of hiring, non-traditional hiring strategy you've used in the past that's worked well for you?
No, I don't. I really don't have a non-traditional way. I just look at people for what they are.
Mm,
I trust that they can. Number one, after you got to do the background check, you got to check their credentials, all this other kind of stuff, like 100%. But after that, I just trust that people can just do what they say they can do until they let me down. I, and I'm very simple. If you can do what you say you can do, that's the easiest thing that you can do. Because I will from the and I want to segue to something real quick. Is in an organization, the biggest thing that people don't identify is unused talent.
mm, that's a waste.
You can 100%. You
Mm,
can have somebody like, hey, I'm outsourcing to marketing, but I have somebody who has a bachelor's in marketing or they just really just like doing it on the outside. Why the heck am I outsourcing when I can internalize and do things team internal? We have to start. If you want to take an organization and make it better, find out what people champion. Find out what they like to do. Hey, if you're an artist, why am I going to pay an artist to paint on the outside of our building and do a mural when I could get you? Hey, why am I going to do this when I can utilize you to benefit our organization? But so many times we go looking outside when it's all internal. Let's build that together. So, hey, that would be like, hey, right here, like where you say, hey, non-traditional. That is non-traditional because
Channing,
people won't tell you to do that.
that
But I would say, sit back and you say, hey, send out a memo. Hey, I'm looking for this. Before I go looking for it on the outside, can anyone in our operation do that? That's not traditional. Do it. And guess what? People will surprise you. 100%. I
man,
love that.
that is gold. That is
Mm-hmm.
gold. That is also something that I firmly believe in. So, in order to do that, to do exactly what you said, one, you need to know your team. You need to understand and you need to connect with them. You need to be able to understand their strengths, their weaknesses, what they like, what are their aspirations, so that you can say, hey, there's an opportunity here to make this connection happen. And not only will that make your team feel valued, you're also not outsourcing stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey man, hey. I'm. It says charity begins at home and spreads abroad.
Mm,
Charity begins at home. take care of your people, then everyone else will be taken care of on the outside. And I'm not very big on like the whole biblical aspect, but that is the Bible.
Mm.
Charity begins at home and spreads abroad. 100%.
Um, as you were talking, Channing, I just remembered what it was that I wanted to mention about that previous segment. About vulnerability, right? You were saying that this is last year or so. This is where you kind of understood the vulnerability and how you just know how to guard it or defend, not guard it, but like you understand how to defend it. I'm gonna just push you a little bit and say that I believe vulnerability is a strength. I believe it's a strength. It's a trait that makes connections happen, trusts happen, but also it if you as the leader is you're vulnerable and you're transparent, to a certain extent, it allows for psychological safety, right? Allows for others to do the same. And
Oh, I agree with that.
yeah.
Like, I, I have been really attempting to become more vulnerable.
Mm.
And that takes a lot. It goes back to what you said, trust. It takes a lot that you put yourself out there, and that is not something that we would typically do.
Mm.
It, but
You're
by
right.
doing that, it it frees me up.
Yeah.
By doing that, it has given me more confidence than what I ever imagined. Uh, personally that I started seeing a counselor this year, and by being vulnerable with my counselor, I have been able to put a lot of things behind me, you know, and that says multitudes of things,
Oh, absolutely.
and I appreciate just my counselor for that. I appreciate you for even giving me the inclination to even want to do that. And that is important, like you said, Channing, do it, and that was more important than anything. And I was able at the right place at the right time to be receptive to that. And guess what? It has been more transformative for me than a little bit.
I'm so
And
happy.
I've been happy about it, it has been really good for me. And I attribute that back to you every time I look at it. I'm like, man, hey, man, Freddie was the one who like really pushed me to do this, and that was unconventional for me. But guess what? At the end of the day, smooth seas never make for skilled sailors,
You
right?
always got these quips, man.
Hey, bro, and they say that, man. Like smooth seas never make for skilled sailors, bro. Like if everything was always going well, then how the heck do you know you're
You're
good at
right.
what you
You're
do?
right.
Hey, the only thing that makes Freddie, like if you're a pilot and you got that freaking yoke in your
Mm.
hand, hey, the turbulence is what makes Freddie. Hey, man, hey,
It's
you say,
true.
man, I landed this thing X amount of time.
Yeah.
Hey, I bought this thing in through a X amount of channels, all this other kind of stuff. That is important because we are defined by our successes in that aspect. And I really appreciate that. I sit back and I think about it. I'm not better than nobody else. I don't know business better than anyone else. Like I'm still figuring it out. I think I have figured things out better than others, but man, I'm still working on it. If something happens tomorrow and the market shifts, I could freaking lose everything, you know?
That's what
And I
entrepreneurs, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and that's those are the things I think about. Like everything's rocky until it become, and even after X amount of years, Lehman Brothers failed after 86 years. They their most profitable year was their year that they went under.
Hmm.
You gotta understand that Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, like you look at those things like, hey man, just because you think you're doing well doesn't mean that you're doing well. Everything is all about smoke and mirrors.
Just your recommendation about the obstacle is a way, which is awesome, but sometimes that could be too trial, too just difficult, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
go
for
through it
sure.
constantly, so I mean, counseling,
That's a good book for you,
yeah,
but it may not be the best book for someone
sure,
else. And what I started learning a long time ago, like hey, certain things are not good for everyone.
yeah.
Hey, Freddie has a mindset that is freaking a dialed in. You can listen to that book and you can gain something from it.
Oh, I'm
Everyone can't like hey because they don't understand the adversity that comes with the obstacle
mm,
being in the way.
mm,
But the adversity is what defines you, Freddie. You know what I mean?
mm.
Like the adversity
It's
is what
true.
makes us who we are. A and I look at a lot of those things. I'm just like, man, like, hey, when I look at Freddie, I don't just see Freddie. Like, hey, I may look at Freddie. I'm like, hey, man, like, hey, Freddie has a very kind face, like all this other kind of stuff. But man, bro, it's a shark behind it. There's a shark in Freddy. Like if I needed that shark to show up, he can show up and he can show out.
Mm.
That's what I look for. That's what we that bro.
Yeah,
That's how we win.
you
That's
know,
the obstacle.
you know,
100%.
you know. So Lehman Brothers business 158 years. Yes,
158. Bear
158
Stearns.
years.
What was Bear Stearns? 86.
Bear Stearns. I don't. 85. Bear Stearns was
85. Yeah. All right. So
Bear
yeah.
Stearns.
So I look at all these bits. Bear Stearns. Hey, they and that was that led to the 2008 crash,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. 100%. So hey, those companies, but they have been around for so long, Freddie.
Mhm. I know. And then complacency kills. You
Hey,
start.
they implode.
Mm,
They implode. No matter how good I'm doing, there is just one wave that I can't ride that will freaking take me under.
mm,
Right? We got to be very careful in business and in our thought processes and everything else that we do. That hey, we got to ensure that we are risk adverse. If there's anything that I would ever talk about, like, and I talk about a lot, risk tolerance and risk adversity. Risk tolerance and risk adversity.
mm,
You have to understand your propensity to bend one way, the next way, before you snap. That's in business. That's in life. That's in real life, right? Business, life, real life. Hey, there people have snapped for less.
mm,
You got to understand how far you are malleable to bend before you break.
mhm.
And that's it. Like, hey, I don't have any secret sauce. Like, hey, but I think about these are things I think about on a normal basis.
Dude, I am really glad that you showed some vulnerability on this podcast. And yeah, so happy for you. With the counseling. I mean, man, when I went to counseling, it was several years ago. It was just really awesome. Seeing a therapist and finding a different perspective and just being able to open that Pandora's box or whatever it is, and deal with it. So, Channing, it was awesome. This was fantastic. I had a ton of fun. Was there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I think all the questions were amazing. I think I hope I was thorough enough to answer the questions that you had, and I tried to be as transparent as possible, uh, and that's important. Like
Yeah.
being able to just be open. So if that helps anyone, man, that's great. And if anyone wants to reach out, please do. So that's important as well.
Although I'm going to, you and I have the same disease, I will say illness. We have the shiny object syndrome, so you can't let that overwhelm you too much. The other things, but yes, but reach out to Channing. He's on LinkedIn. You can look up Longhorn Capital, Longhorn Ventures, and yeah, really, really stoked to do this, Channing. It was really a fun time, and
Thanks, Freddie.
Yeah. For everyone else, thanks for making it this far and thanks for listening. I hope you go and build your A team. Thanks.